Good afternoon. My name is Miguel Silva Graça. I'm a senior researcher from CIIID, Research Center for Territory, Transport and Environment of the University of Coimbra, Portugal. And my presentation is called Digital, Green and Unfair: Citizen Participation and Participatory Budgeting on Pandemic Times and the Portuguese Experience. This presentation will address the state of the art in terms of public participation initiatives developed in the last 3 years, and we'll try to analyze the impact of COVID-19 in international civic participation practices, namely in Portugal, and concerning its participatory budgeting at national and local levels. From ancient Greece to the present day, the issue of citizen participation in governing the society has always been inseparable from theorizing about democracy as an ideal model for regulating society. And the question how individuals materialize their condition as citizens by actively participating in decision-making, and that the quality of these decisions is always improved by this process, has been at the center of the debate on theory and practice of the public administration over the last century. Public participation is today a widely spread and recognized concept, being a mechanism that is both properly used and incorrectly applied by the public administration, whether in the elaboration of public policies or in the management of its relationship with citizens and communities. Participatory budgeting, or PB, is one possible form amongst many of citizen participation, characterizing itself as a process in which people are involved in the activity of deciding how public money is spent, allowing citizens to identify, discuss, and prioritize public spending, and giving them the power to make real decisions how to allocate part of a municipal or a national budget. In the field of citizen participation, participatory budgeting has gained a world-class position in the last 30 years. Its global expansion is a case study, and since the first example in Porto Alegre, in Brazil, in 1989, participatory budgeting has expanded and become a major innovation in local decision-making around the world, counting in the end of 2019 with over 10,000 experiences listed over 70 countries. However, the world changed in the last 2 years. The health emergency caused by the COVID-19 disease has had gigantic repercussion on people's lives, on human relations, on the action of states and public administrations, and of course, in democracy too. In fact, in over 30 years of participatory budgeting in the world, the trend has always been one of growth. The year of 2020 marked the first major invention of this movement, diminishing from 10,000 to 4,000 active processes during the first year of the COVID pandemic in 2020, as you can see in this world map. Here, we can find a European map of participatory budgeting showing that at the end of 2019, there were more than 5,000 active processes total, and Portugal in the top 5 countries with more programs running. However, also that number diminished to less than half of active PBs during the pandemic, summing up in 2020 only a little more than 2,200 active processes, yet keeping Portugal in the second place of countries with more active processes. Nevertheless, at the global level and in Europe too, most of these participatory processes, especially those that depend on face-to-face interactions, have been affected by the pandemic crisis, with the suspension of or their reconversion through the adoption of digital channels, namely causing negative impacts on the access to the most disadvantaged or vulnerable people. Is this in fact the start of a new era of digital democracy? Does online civic engagement works, or does it exclude parts of the population like older people, migrants, or poor and homeless people? We believe so, but we definitely need to deepen our research in this area. And if it's probably too soon to know the answer, we know something for sure. Public participation has definitely changed in the world, in Europe, and in Portugal in these pandemic times, being in fact, as we can see, more digital, more green, but also more unfair. And in fact, Portugal was no exception. Despite before the pandemic, it existed 3 national, 2 regional, and more than 200 local participatory budgetings. During 2020, only half of the local process started its normal annual cycles or kept working. The 2 regional processes, after a stop during 2020 and 2021, restarted one in August 2021 and the other on March 2022. And respecting the 3 national processes after a stop during 2020 and 2021, the non-approval of the government budget in December 2021 caused a political crisis that led to anticipated national elections in the beginning of 2022 and to the stop of its launch. Nevertheless, the existence of three national participatory budgeting, the first worldwide created by the Portuguese government in 2017, namely the participatory budgeting for Portugal, the youth participatory budgeting for Portugal, and the participatory budgeting for schools, are a unique fact in the global panorama, being the only country in the world where these three scales coexist. If we look at the local level, and mainly to its capital city, Lisbon, we'll find in the past 3 years to the creation of a new group of climate change influenced participation tools, like a green participatory budgeting, a green participatory budgeting for elementary and junior high schools, or a green commitment platform for organizations and enterprises, whose processes were heavily interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Respecting the Lisbon participatory budgeting, one of the flagships projects that we'll address with more detail, throughout the last 11 editions, citizens presented more than 6,000 proposals that were adapted to more than 2,000 projects that were put to vote, amongst which were chosen 139 winning projects that would gather in total more than 300,000 votes, corresponding to a total value of investment of more than 36 million euros. To have some idea, it will be certainly useful to give some examples of the most emblematic projects that were voted and implemented over the first 10 years, and that we can see here in the above photos, like a small and medium enterprise incubator, a public library, a creative hub, a Fix My Street app, a green urban corridor, the rehabilitation of a bandstand and surrounding plaza, several cycling tracks, a dog kennel, a public garden, or an indoor climbing wall. In its last edition, dedicated to climate change, it represented 251 proposals, which were adapted to into 69 projects that were put to vote, amongst which were chosen 23 winning projects, summing up a total of 162 projects in all editions. Well, but then it started 2020, and we know the rest. COVID-19 pandemic stopped most of the public participation initiatives, mainly the presidential-based ones, and transformed them into digital-based processes. Due to public health restrictions, all presidential activities were cancelled and just online sessions took place, and naturally, all submissions and voting processes were digitized. The second process I would like to talk about is the green participatory budgeting for elementary and junior high schools. As it started in the end of 2019, it wasn't affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The process was presentially based and focused on the participation of school students from 10 to 16 years old and centered exclusively on green proposals. Being the students able to vote the proposals they wanted to be implemented in their own school among the 12 that existed in the catalog, organized in 6 different areas: energy, water, nature and biodiversity, waste, mobility, and education for sustainability. In this first year of experiment, it were chosen 4 basic schools in Lisbon and with a budget of 10,000 euros per school. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it wasn't possible to extend this experience that started as a pilot in 2019 to the following years to all basic schools of the city as planned, as all activities scheduled from February 2020 onwards were interrupted by the pandemic lockdown and school closures. To end, I would just like to make a final remark regarding the national level initiatives of participatory budgeting in Portugal. Like it was told before, 3 national participatory budgets have been promoted by the national government since 2017. Being the first one, the participatory budgeting for Portugal, open to all citizens and suspended since 2019. It didn't happen in this year because there were regional, national, and European elections, and in 2000 and 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. The second one, the youth participatory budgeting for Portugal, dedicated to the participation of younger people, and the third one, participatory budgeting for schools aimed at funding projects in high schools. But more than characterizing the previous editions of 2017 and 2018 of the participatory budgeting for Portugal, where citizens presented more than 2,000 proposals that were adapted to more than 1,200 projects that were put to vote, amongst which there were chosen 60 winning projects that would gather in total more than 200,000 votes, corresponding to a total investment of 8 million euros. This final remark is just to state that 95% of these projects are in execution or are already concluded, which is extremely important to the credibility of the process. However, the scheduling of anticipated national legislative elections, as already mentioned, due to the non-approval of the government budget, affected by itself, did not allow the launch of these PBs, as without budget, it cannot be made a citizen's decision how to spend it. Cancel the start of the next participatory budgeting for Portugal edition, which was scheduled to start on January 27, 2022, marking the commemoration of the first National Participation Day. This new edition, that still doesn't have a scheduled date to start, according to the approved rules, will be dedicated to the strategic challenges of the country, which are defined in the government's program: the fight against climate change, the response to demographic challenge, the reduction of inequalities, and the construction of a more digital society. And hopefully, it will establish new guidelines to promote the involvement and commitment of local entities into evaluation of projects, both social and territorial cohesion of the country, and reinforcement of the transparency and efficiency. That is, being more digital, more green, and more inclusive. Thank you very much.